explaining in such a way that the mind opens because the heart has understood. Aim to inspire rather than teach. My love for those I teach will do that. My love for God will do that. To the extent that I am soul conscious when teaching, so others will have this experience. Never force anyone to make spiritual effort. When the mind opens, this happens naturally. Avoid making comparisons. It creates loss of hope. Harbor no ill will and never try to score a point. Be like the parent whose love for the child is what's making him grow. Om Shanti. Such a powerful, powerful lesson that it took me back to the days of my childhood when I was still in school. It made me think a lot about the people who were my teachers, what I learned from them voluntarily, and also what I learned from them involuntarily. I remember, I think now it's grade 3, but in those days, my standard 1 teacher, the most important thing that she taught all of us girls in her class was cleanliness. And as I go through the years, my favorite teacher in junior high school was a Catholic nun, Sister Agnes, who actually made my love for English even more. But what also increased that love for me was that for the first time in my life, educational life, I was in a school where there was a bookshelf with English books, Afrikaans books, and Setswana books, because I learned Setswana in that school. And I remember specifically, I would read 40 English books a year. Just every year, I would eat up all the books that are on the shelf in that particular grade that I was in, to a point where I used to sneak books into my room, my dormitory, read under my blankets using a torch, and this is the result. My classes. And when I went to senior high school, my matric teacher inspired me to love history a great deal. Simply because of the way he used to teach us history. We had to buy the history book that was in the school syllabus, but he also made us buy another history book that was not in the school syllabus to help us to understand the history of South Africa and the history of the world better. But for me, what was the final nail on the coffin was him, the style he used to teach us history because we grew up in a culture of storytelling. Every evening when we went to bed, mother would tell us a story, bedtime story, in Tsomi. And he adopted that style. So he would prepare the lesson at home, come into class, would never stand in front of us in the classroom as a teacher, but he would walk around the classroom telling us the story of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And that system of teaching made his lessons sit in my mind. Secondly, I was also thinking about that time and the education system in South Africa. Corporal punishment was the way. If you did anything wrong in class, you got a stick, you were hit with a stick. And that stick would create fear in you so that you made sure that you did your homework, written homework. You also did the homework where you had to read and study a subject. And that was the system of teaching that was part of the educational system in South Africa, corporal punishment. But over and above that, I remembered also another important fact on being a teacher, that in those days, teaching was not a job. Of course, it was a profession, but it was also a passion. And amongst us, it was one of the most valued professions in South Africa. And so being a teacher was something that was held in high esteem in our communities. Teachers were respected a lot. We looked up to teachers. But then, as I opened the subject of being a teacher even wider, growing up, I realized that people around us, starting within the family system, are teachers. Your brothers and sisters are teachers because we are all different. We all come together with different qualities, different talents. And as children, displaying your talents was a game because we all used to go and play out on the streets. How would you learn the latest dance, for instance, from others who had seen it first and copied it from those who had invented that dance? So you would learn it from them. Anything, that young people could do very well got passed on very quickly. We all learned it. Why? Because we all wanted to fit in. We all wanted to be part of. And so life itself is a teacher. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from seeing the talents of other people, their qualities, and we become inspired by that. But now, as I was reading Daddy's piece, Daddy comes up with such a mind-changing way of teaching. I could even say mind-blowing, because We grow up in society being told, being taught, some mostly verbally, don't do this, do it like that. Come here, sit down, stand up, that kind of situation. But she comes in with a highly experienced way of teaching, which comes from spirituality. And when I say it comes from spirituality, in her first line, she says that when you teach with subtlety. And the word subtle, I must say, as a person who had a love for the English language, is a word that I came to hear a lot when I became a student of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University. Subtlety, or being subtle. So you are going to teach somebody without making them realize that you are teaching them. But her understanding of teaching goes even deeper than that, because she says that sometimes you would do something or teach something or say something, and whatever you say, usually people feel it here in their hearts. And I know this, when you understand something with your heart, but you are unable to express it in words. And she says, then you have to wait. Wait for that person to get to that point where they can describe what they are feeling in their hearts verbally. And this was reminding me again of a friend in the theater who used to, when I first came into theater, and I didn't know a lot. So I would always ask her, but how did you do that? You started growing old on stage. I watched you growing old, and you became this old woman who was sick and everything. How did you do that so convincingly? And as usual, she would come back and say, now, Tima, because that's how she used to call me, Tima, this is what I did, you see, the first time, because aging is a process. So the first time when I went on stage, I pulled my woolen cap down a little bit. And then when I came off stage, when it was my turn again to go back and do my part, I started coughing. And then I started walking slowly. This is a sign that my health and my strength is decreasing. And then I would continue to do all the other things that would show that I'm about to die. And for me, that was just amazing. I mean, like really, really amazing. How did you know that? But she's an actress. She had to watch elderly people. She had to watch someone who was on her deathbed and imbibe, all of those steps of watching someone who was healthy, becoming unhealthy, becoming old, slowly getting sick until they lie on their bed and they don't get up anymore. And I have never forgotten that lesson from her. It was a simple thing, but it was not a simple thing also, because acting also is a is something that not everybody can do. Yeah, we can do it, but other people do it much better than others. It's a skill. It's a skill. And then Daddy comes up and says that my love for those I teach will do that. My love for God will do that. And I was thinking about these two lines. My love for those I teach will do that. My love for God will do that. Of course, Daddy is a spiritual teacher. Okay. She teaches us about who we are. We are souls, and souls are spirits. And what are the qualities inside of us? Then, who is God? God is the supreme soul, the father of all souls. He too has qualities inside of him. So, when God teaches you, he teaches you through inspiration. He inspires you in the way he will explain the lesson of whatever it is that he's teaching you. He will teach you with love. And because he is teaching you with love, you accept God's love and you have love for God because of the way God is teaching you. And when you become a teacher of what God has taught you, the two come together. Your love for the people that you're teaching and your love for God come into play. I loved this paragraph very, very much. And so she says, to the extent that you are soul conscious when you are teaching, that will also help you to bring people closer to you. And I was thinking of the word soul consciousness. And soul consciousness is not something that we are very familiar with. We only come to know soul consciousness when we study spirituality, as we are doing in the Brahma Kumaris. Because what happens here is that you understand specifically that there are two partners at play. There's this body, which I used to think I was. But then there is another subtle partner inside. Something so quiet, something so silent that sometimes it can be overlooked. Yet, it is none of that. It is not silent. It is not quiet. The soul. Because that is our real identity. We are souls. And the mind is in the soul. The intellect, which we use for reasoning, is in the soul. Even the heart, the spiritual heart, for feeling is in the soul. It is the soul that brings life into this body. It is the soul that uses this precious instrument called our bodies to see the world, to express itself, to connect with other people. And so the beauty of this word soul consciousness is that it takes us beyond the body and it takes us into that realm of spirituality, of really knowing who I am, of really knowing where my qualities are. And of course, of knowing that God the Supreme Soul is also a soul like me. Lastly, I just love Daddy's advice. Never force anyone to make spiritual effort. When the mind opens, this happens naturally. Avoid making comparisons. That is one of the worst things you can ever do, specifically to someone who has just come into spirituality or even anything in life that's new to them. And when you start comparing them to somebody else who already is ahead, they lose hope. They think they will never make it. And I loved Daddy's advice at the end of this piece very, very much. It is something that I would like to bring up from time to time daily. And to make it easier for me to remember this lesson, last lesson that Daddy has given us, I also want to share this with you, is that let's do everything with love. Let's do everything with care. Loving and caring. Because when you do things with love and you do things with caring, you bring people closer to you. You don't push them away. And I've seen Daddy Junkie, and I have had the honor of listening to her classes. I have had the honor of just seeing her when I was in India at our headquarters. Her love for God, she just lights up. She just lights up. And you sit back and you think, wow, I want to be like her. I want to understand God so well that He becomes a part of me every day, every hour, with everything that I do, with every thought, with every word that I say. And that's what I saw in Daddy Jackie. She was the master teacher, really. She was just an amazing, amazing soul, and still is, because she has left all this knowledge behind for us to use and improve and become beautiful souls like our Father God. And so I'm going to end this session with a very short meditation. So let's just sit back and relax. And think. I, the soul, I am a teacher. There are qualities in me that are subtle, that people see in me and love. I, the soul, I have the most powerful teacher in my life, God Himself. And He has given us examples like our daddy, people who have imbibed the teachings, souls who live them at every moment of the day. I am inspired by these souls, and I too want to become equal to them, be like them or even more, and be a shining star so that when I walk outside, I would not need to say a word. Just this innate goodness that is in me just flows out into the world, touches the hearts of others, and makes them want to know, how did she become that? And that would make them come closer. So as I step out this morning, I want to remember that I too am a teacher. I do not have to open my mouth, but my being, my behavior speaks louder than my words. Om Shanti.